Kubota Rtv 900 fork selector replacement. In the other videos I showed you taking the gearbox apart, and here's the broken selector. Here's my replacement selector that turned up today, so I'm going to do this video showing you how to put the fork selectors and the gears back into the gearbox. What I've done is I emeryed the end of these selectors to make sure that they can travel through the body where they jam up, hence why these break in the first place. So these now go through nice and smoothly. I'll put some oil on the end of them when I'm reassembling them, just so it makes it easier to put it back together. It's a little bit fiddly putting this sprocket in, because it has to go on the casing here, and if you look on the inside, that comes over and covers this area where this bearing has to seat into. So that has to be put on afterwards from the inside, and it's a bit tricky to get to, so I'll show you how to do that. Right, here we go. So here's the first set of gears. There's a selector. I'll put some oil on the end of the selector shaft here. Right, that sits it on there, so that when you select the gears, it runs smoothly. So what you have to do is put these into the gearbox first. They have to go in a certain order. So we'll put these in. Line the selector up first, and then the bearing, and you just gently use it, give them a little wriggle, and they'll find their position. And you can see now that that's moving smoothly up and down in its correct place. And next you have to do the main gear drum, this one here, where I had the broken selector that went onto this part here. I'm going to do the same with that. Put some oil on the end of the selector rod, so that will help that go into the housing. Do the same with that, and put that onto the gears where that engages, so that can run and work these gears. And again, now I'll offer that into the gearbox. You have to wiggle it about, it's a bit tricky, but if you gently do it, it will eventually find its position. You get that selector rod into the housing first, and then worry about the gears lining up. Just give them a gentle wriggle, and there we'll go. And just got to line up the cogs with the bottom ratio. You've got to lift up the other selector to let that one down. Now they're in the correct position, and you can see they're moving. I'll just bring the camera over here. A bit hard doing it one-handed. So this is the selector gear that wasn't working in the first place because that was broken. As you can see, that's running smoothly through the body, working correctly, as is that one. Right, so that leaves one more to go. There's this one. It's actually the easiest one to put in. Just drop that down inside. Give it a wiggle, and that's in. Give them all a little wiggle. They're all in position. They're all doing what they should do. Everything's looking good in there. I've cleaned out the inside of the casing. Now this is the tricky one, because this has to go on the inside. So I'll line up this casing in the right way and drop that over the top of the bearings. Now I've got to line up the two rods that come through the casing there. You can see where my hand is. That's the other end of the selectors where I had the problem. Now I've also got my hand underneath this casing, and you can just see the top part of the shaft that comes through. Now I'll let that down in position. Hopefully I won't drop it all. Give it a little wriggle. That's it. Right. washer on the back of that, spring washer, and get that nut on. And that's fallen nicely into position there. I'm not going to tighten that nut up too tight. I'm just going to give it a little wriggle and let it find its seat. There we go, that's down, that's in. Look at that. Anyone think I'm a professional? We're in. Good stuff. Right, I'm just going to put a bolt in here to stop me losing this. If I turn this over and this falls off, could lose all them gears and everything and have to start again. And what I'm going to show you in a minute is there's 3 ball bearings that go onto the end of this selector. Right, we'll just turn that over. Only just nip them gently in position. Now we can see. I'll bring this over here. This is where they jammed that in here, which makes the gear lever stiff to put into gears in the cab of the RTV. That's where the problem stems from. Hence why your ball will jump out of these selectors here. So this is the only way to fix this problem. Sometimes, yes, you can get away with taking this top off here and putting the ball back in the casing, but that's jumping out for that reason. Now you can see these move very smoothly, very easily. And you can see where the rod comes through the back of the casing. There's 3 ball bearings that have to go in here. And what they do is they stop these selectors working both together. So basically the 3 ball bearings lock in and only let one selector work at any one given time, so that you can't put it in forward and reverse or whatever that does. You can see this one's also working, bottom one, which I had the problem with. So that's doing what it should do now. Right, I'll tip this back over and I'll show you where the ball bearings go. Tip that like that, you can see. Right, 3 ball bearings here. You might find that when you take this apart to inspect your gears, if you're lucky enough that the bottom selector or the top selector can fall out and it's not seized, as you pull this away, these 3 ball bearings can fall out of this part here, fall into the casing, and you'll find the ball bearings in the bottom of the casing and think, where do they come from? They actually live in here. So once these selectors are in, it'll be a bit fiddly because you have to get them in the right position, but you drop these in through that hole. 1, 2, and obviously the third one, unless you stand it upright and give it a bit of a wriggle. Just find something to flick them into position. You might have to wriggle the selector because it has to be in the correct position for these ball bearings to lock into place. There we go. That's it. Right, we're there. Then you've got this bolt. Screws in there. If you look on the end of the bolt, there's a tiny indent where that's been screwed down on top of the ball bearing. That's where that goes. Screw that in there. And you have to just wiggle them to make sure that that's in the correct position before you screw it down fully, because that will lock them in a certain position, so that only lets one selector work at any one given time. As long as they can work freely, then you're fine, you're in business. Right, now the other part is in here. There's a spring, there's a ball bearing goes in this side and a spring, and the same on this end here. And what that does, that helps obviously lock it into its drive position, so when it's in a gear, that holds it into gear. Here's the ball bearing, here's the spring. You put the ball bearing in first, this side, the selector, the spring in, and then you push the spring in, place with a punch or something. And you've got this small dowel here. This dowel goes in here. You simply tap that in position and tap that through the casing, and that holds this spring in under tension and pushes the ball bearing down on the end of this shaft. Once you've done that, put the rest of your bolts in here. I made a new gasket up yesterday, and gasket paper I got to go on here. And then you're ready to offer your gearbox back up to the where the diff's housed and the transmission pump, and ready to bolt it back into place and put the engine back onto the other end, line everything up, and you're ready to put the whole lot back in the machine. I'll do that in my next video.